once said, ain't that a kick in the head?
Dean had the capacity of making you never know what was an act. I don't think he drank on stage, and other people swear he drank on stage.
Like the sailor said, quote, ain't that a hole in a boat?
I'm not sure if anyone has ever read Dean Martin. He was unto himself in that regard.
If this is just the beginning, my life is gonna be beautiful. She's telling me.
That persona that he has, that's Dean. He didn't have to make any effort. He just saw the world differently than different than anyone else.
Tell me quick, oh, ain't love a kick? Tell me quick, ain't love a kick in the head?
Cooler than any of his compadres, Dean Martin made success look so simple. Alongside Frank Sinatra in the golden years of popular entertainment, Dean Martin was easy-living 1950s America. With a drink in one hand and a broad on each arm, these guys showed the world how to have fun. This freedom was what the war had been fought for. Sinatra's clan held the stage at the Sands Casino in Las Vegas in 1960. The multi-talented Sammy Davis Jr., comedian and compere Joey Bishop, heartthrob and movie star Peter Lawford. They called these guys the Rat Pack.
The whole town went nuts. When that group came to town, went to the Summit, or the Rat Pack, or whatever you call them, whatever you want. But when they came to town, Vegas was you couldn't get in anywhere. The hotels were all booked. People were all over the town just having a ball.
Anybody that you can think of was there. Marilyn Monroe, JFK, everybody was there. And it was just unbelievable. You had to be there to appreciate it.
Very naughty is the best word that I can ever use for that group.
Well, let's drink up and be somebody. Let's drink up and be anybody. Yeah. There's a hell of an ad-lib, yeah.
When you worked with Sinatra, you always felt like you were handling something that might explode any minute. You know, there was a little bit of that temperament. But with Dean Martin, I never saw that happen. He was always in control, always very, very sociable, very easy to get along with. He was Mr. Cool.
The party at the Sands Casino happened as much offstage as on, the Rat Pack hanging out like a teenage gang, although these boys were all in their 40s. In the wisecracking atmosphere of the Sands steam room, Dean was more chilled out than most, but there's no doubt that Sinatra was acknowledged as the head of the firm.
It isn't that we were afraid of Frank, so much as, I think, respectful of him. We would make jokes about not wanting our knees broken, but...
Martin wasn't pushed around by Sinatra ever. It wouldn't put up with it, you know. And yet they were very close, extremely close friends. They'd kill for each other, probably. And I'm not sure that they didn't, but...
The attitude personified by the Rat Pack spread far beyond their twice-nightly 5-week run at the Sands Casino. During the day, they'd film the movie Ocean's 11. A story of honor among thieves loyal only to each other, it was an instant hit. Later, it became the model for darker films like Scorsese's Goodfellas and Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs.
You can see by some of the pictures that they had a ball. They had this sort of a phony fight scene that they did. They would practice that and rehearse that throughout the day, and you get wonderful shots.
They were a little disrespectful of the craft. They were having an awful lot of fun on Ocean's 11.
You fulfilled all your fantasies, pleasured yourself completely. I met all these beautiful girls, and they were putting their hotel keys in my pocket, and of course I would answer the call. I mean, I was young and energetic, and It was great.
Dean a lot would disappear. He didn't always do that. He wasn't always off with all the guys.
If anybody put any keys in his pocket, I'd go in his pocket and take them. I would say, listen, it's not Dean, but it's me, so it was okay.
Dean got his kicks another way. After a show, he'd head for the blackjack tables and take over the dealing.
He was king at 5-card stud. The stranger's game was 5-card stud. He was king at
His inside track on the gambling racket was one he'd learned working in the casinos of his hometown.
Sweet, sweet memories you gave me. You can't beat the memories you gave me.
Take one fresh and tender kiss.
This was the gambling mecca. This was little Chicago.
All you had here downtown, nightclubs and casinos. And, if you don't mind me saying it, 3 blocks, nothing but prostitution.
Slot machines, numbers. This was known as the mecca.
This town was wide open. Down on Market Street and 4th Street, people walked shoulder to shoulder. That's how packed it was, all the way to midnight.
Forget a small moonbeam.
I was born in Steubenville, right around the corner from Dean Martin. We grew up together. We were always getting into things, you know. We were playing cards, we were shooting dice for money, and we were sort of into the gambling racket, and we were only 7 years old.
I'll tell you a little bit about his dad. His dad was a very good barber. He started on 6th Street here, and then he went up to Hub. He had a nice shop. It was mostly women. He was a woman barber. He gave that special cut, that special woman cut at that time.
The son of an Italian immigrant, Dean had no interest in his father's trade or the sweat of the local steel mills.
He was king at 5-card stud.
Working the tables was an easier way of making a living. At the back of the Rex cigar store, there was an illegal gambling den. Dean was quick to learn all the tricks.
As he would deal, or he would work at the tables, he always had bigger shoes than what he's really had to have. And he had a hole in his pants pocket, and he would put the silver dollars in his pants pocket, and they would go down his leg and into his shoe. And he would go home at night with maybe $10 in silver dollars.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
No matter what he put on, any old jacket, could be from welfare even, it hung on him. And it hung on him perfect. He'd just walk around, Jesus Christ, a handsome son of a gun.
He dressed real nice. Every time he went out, he always had a nice suit on. Looked good. Looked like a movie star, even when he wasn't one.
In a way, he was the type of guy, I'm all me. I'm Dean Martin, you know, Dino Cruschetti, you know, all that. In other words, he's one of the smart dagos.
Hold me close and hold me fast. The magic spell you cast. This is
Dean's singing was inspired by Bing Crosby's popular laid-back style. At 17, he began appearing in clubs in the Midwest.
Under the moon and the stars, he had romance. He had romance in his voice, and that's what made him. They really went for him when he had that romance, when he sang them beautiful romantic tunes. He sent you. He brought the moon, he brought the stars, and he made a string of pearls for the girls, and he sang them beautiful songs. And they closed their eyes and they dreamed. And that's the way it was.
Money burns a hole in my pocket.
In the early years, money was forever slipping through Dean's fingers. As a professional singer on the first rung of the showbiz ladder, he gambled with his career. He sold more than 100% of himself to 5 different agents and later fought his way back from bankruptcy. Ill health meant he avoided the army. Then a chance meeting with a precocious young comedian was to change both their lives. Unlikely buddies, Dean and Jerry went on to become a globally successful double act. In multiracial post-war America, the goofy Jewish kid and the suave Italian crooner were the toast of Atlantic City. In the summer of '46, they were soon topping the bill.
Crazy, Jack. My name's not Jack, I'm Dean. I'm Dean. No, what I mean to say, Daddy Pops, you gotta get with it, Daddy. I'm not your father. What do you mean, Daddy Pops? I'm Dean. What I'm trying to tell you, Daddy, is that you gotta get on it, see? That's important. Get on it, get on it, get on it. Bring it out here, man. I'll get on it.
I had played in Atlantic City in a nightclub, and they needed another act. And they asked me to suggest someone, and I knew he wasn't working. I said, why don't you get Dean? The guy in the club said, well, we don't want just a singer. I said, but he's more than that. He and I do wonderful, funny things together. So they brought him in.
It's just such a great act. I mean, they'd worked out a routine that was just so innovative, I thought, and so unique. And you couldn't get in the place. I mean, it was just jammed every night.
Everything that I ever wrote was sex and slapstick. That was the whole premise. And it worked because we never let the public know that sex and slapstick was the underlying factor that made it work.
Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis in a mighty fancy stagecoach are here with their latest starring picture, Partners.
Martin and Lewis made 16 movies together and were radio stars before their television fame. The partnership lasted 10 years.
Jerry is gunning for Chief Make-'em Laugh.
You know, Jerry's very, very good, and he's good at what he does. But he wanted to do everything. He wanted to direct, he wanted to write, he wanted to produce, he wanted to be the cameraman, he wanted to do everything. And then it kind of left Dad out in the cold.
I had nothing to do except learn some songs and repeat what he said, that's all, or slap him in the face. I just didn't like the pictures. I wasn't going to spend my life doing pictures like that. They said, you can't walk out on a $20, $30 million. I said, well, you just watch me, and I walked out, that's all.
From what we observed, it was not amicable. They wouldn't even talk to each other for quite some time. Jerry was a tough guy to deal with. Jerry was rather a genius in many respects, but he was abrasive, too. Nobody gave Dean credit. You know, they always thought that Jerry Lewis was the anchor to the team and the big talent. As it turned out, it was quite the reverse of that. I think that Dean Martin had the talent.
When the skies are cloudy and gray, they're only gray for a day. So wrap your troubles in dreams.
He had a sense of style that was just wonderful. If you saw him from behind, you could tell it was Dean Martin. I mean, he just had a way of walking and talking and holding himself. I remember the cashmere sweaters, and just really cool. Very cool.
Meticulous dresser and suntan, but natural. He never acted. I'll tell you what I remember a lot about. He had a great head of hair. Once I said to him, Dean, under all that hair, must be a hat. And he just cracked up.
What you see when you look at Dean on television, in films, and you look at him, if you're a woman, you go, my goodness, that's a handsome son of a gun. And if you're a guy, you look at him and you go, he's a real guy. And that's what he was. What you saw was what he was.
And dream them away. When marimba rhythms start to play, dance with me, make me sway.
I was only out of high school about a year, and it was love at first sight. He just said to me, I want you to come to California with me. I said, what do you mean, go to California with you? He said, well, come on, and we'll live together out there. I said, are you out of your mind? And I said, I would never do that. I said, I'm a good Catholic girl, and I'm waiting for my wedding. We can do a little necking, but that's it, you know?
Dancers may be on the floor, dear, but my eyes will see only you. Only you have the magic technique. When we sway, I grow weak.
6 weeks went by, and then my mother called me, and she said, a telegram just came, and he said, I love you, tickets are on the way. Will you marry me? So that was it.
Sway me smooth, sway me now.
Jeannie became the love of Dean's life, but for the moment it slipped his mind that he was already married with 4 children.
I have an amazing mother. You know, she's 85 years old and she don't need glasses. She drinks right out of the bottle.
The announcer says, ladies and gentlemen, direct from the bar, Dean Martin. Walks out on stage, and he's holding a glass of booze. He then goes on and he does one of the great performances that I've ever seen of a guy being slightly drunk. And it was wonderful. Show was over, I go backstage, he shakes hands with me, and I look at him and I go, you son of a gun. You're cold sober. And he looked and he went, gotcha, didn't I?
I say, a little old wine drinker me.
Dean's solo movie career got off to a pretty dismal start with the flop, 10,000 Bedrooms. In time, he would have some memorable parts in more than 50 films, working with the most famous stars of the day. The turning point was the invitation in 1958 to appear in what was to be his first serious acting role.
My manager called and said, would you mind working with Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift? I said, are you drunk? Would I mind? I'd love it. He said, well, you'll have to take a big cut. And I said, I'll do it for nothing. And that was The Young Lions.
That crucial role was followed by Some Came Running with Frank Sinatra, and a string of westerns including Rio Bravo, where he reveled in the part of the drunken deputy sheriff, alongside John Wayne and Angie Dickinson.
Where are you going?
Get your hands off of me.
I said, where are you going?
You got no use for a man you can't depend on. One bad night and I'm done for.
John Wayne always said acting is not acting but reacting. And that's a little similar to Dean. He is more interesting doing nothing than most people doing something. If you watch him in the scenes with Walter Brennan, it looks as though he can hardly stop smiling. There's that fine line between you wonder if he's really enjoying Walter Brennan as much as he is, or is he acting?
I told you to get back in there. And then getting told off yourself.
Dean had shown that he could work in the best of company, but a serious acting career was more hard work than he was used to. As Matt Helm in the spoof spy movies, he was on more familiar ground. This was a bit of fun, just like real life for Dino.
I wanted to play Hamlet, but they talked me out of it, you know.
He would get his script, and he would come home and he would tear out every page that he wasn't on. And so a script would be like, you know, this thick, and then it would come out and be about like this. He didn't know what the film was.
Why didn't you tell me this before?
I tried, but we were in a hurry and...
You're sure?
Do you mean, am I sure I'm pregnant? Or am I sure you're the father?
I remember one time on a movie set, he was doing a scene with an actress, and she was over to the side trying to get in this mood acting, you know, and 20 minutes went by, and Dean walked over, tapped her on the shoulder, and he said, dear, we'll not get Academy Award for this. Let's just go home. Come on, do your part.
Stop twisting your wedding ring. I know you've got a wife. I know you can't marry me. I knew it in the beginning.
Just in time. I've found you just in time. Before you came, my time was running low.
He just kind of wanted to live an Andy Hardy sort of life, be with his children, and everybody else's children, I might add. 601 Mountain Drive was like Disneyland. I mean, it was such a funny house. You sit there watching TV and footballs and baseballs and darts and the dogs and the children and all the noise. Every TV set in the house on.
I'm going, no more doubt or fear. I found my way.
I had to do all the disciplining. I say, all right, that's it. Into the den to see your father. And I said, Dean, when I send them to the den, you better make sure that they know that what I've said better happen. They'd go in there and he'd say, sit down. We're going to have a talk here now, you know, and then they'd all roar laughing in there. He'd just say, okay, that's enough time, I think, you know. And he never did anything.
My 16th birthday party. We were being loud, you know, of course, but anything past 10 o'clock, it was just too much for Dad because he liked to get up early to go play golf the next day. So when he was finished with the party, he'd walk upstairs, call the Beverly Hills Police, and say, those Martins are making too much noise. And they'd come, they'd knock on the door, and then the next day, I'm sitting at breakfast, and Dad said, well, you had a very nice party, didn't you? I said, it was very nice. He said, somebody called the police on us, and it was over very early. He said, oh, really? He says, yeah, I know. I said, what do you mean you know? He says, well, I did it.
Changed my lonely life that lucky day.
When they tell you I'm dating with somebody new, don't you know that I'm playing a part, forgetting you? I tried to stay.
During the 1950s, Dean Martin was Capitol Records' most commercially successful artist, beating even old Blue Eyes himself. He used to tease Sinatra that he would see off the threat of the upstart Elvis Presley, even if Frank couldn't. But when rock and roll produced the songwriting talent of the Beatles, Dean's sales suffered.
Don't you know that it's busting my heart, forgetting you, forgetting you, forgetting you.
In 1962, Dean signed to Sinatra's own label, Reprise.
When I got a chance to work with Dean, we did an album called Dream with Dean, because in Vegas, after the big show, he'd go out in the lounge with a 3 or 4 piece little group and do these old standards, and people loved it. And we had one song to go, and it was some old standard, and Dean said, I don't want to do it. I said, we need one more. So his piano player, Ken Lane, said, how about my song? And he played Everybody Loves Somebody Sometime. I went, wow, that's great.
Everybody loves somebody sometime.
I went back in the control booth and I said, what a great song Ken just wrote. Everybody started to laugh because they all knew it was 20 years old. On the way out that night, I said to Dean, let me do that with a big orchestra with you and we'll have a hit record. He said, okay, give the kid a chance. The following week, I got the best rhythm section in LA, the young drive-in rock and roll rhythm section, you would call them then. And a big orchestra put the two together, and we came up with Everybody Loves Somebody.
Everybody loves somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow.
That night, after we recorded it, I went to the house with a bottle of Jack Daniels and the acetate we made back then and wore it out. I knew it was going to be a big hit record.
In my opinion, you're all wrong for it.
I'm all wrong for what?
That song. I told Orville he should send it to Bobby Darin or Elvis.
Elvis who?
I suppose you never heard of the Beatles either.
Oh, sure, and I can sing better than all 3 of them.
We first put out Everybody Loves Somebody. It went out to the radio stations, and nobody even listened to it. It was Dean Martin, and the Beatles were big hits.
Well, you...
What about me?
Let's face it, you're over the hill.
Sure do know how to hurt a fella.
Finally, one day in Worcester, Massachusetts, I believe, and in New Orleans, 2 people played at the same time, and it exploded. I went to Vegas to tell Dean, you got a #1 record. He was so tickled. He sent Elvis a telegram. It says, if you can't handle the Beatles, I'll do it for you, Pally. And that was the time he knocked the Beatles out of #1.
Waiting for someone like you. Everybody loves somebody sometime.
Now, this is only a gag. I don't drink it.
One day I walked into his room and I saw this beautiful bowl full of ice and Martinelli's apple juice. And when the show was over, I said, Dean, that's what you drink? He said, yeah, otherwise I'd be drunk.
Don't be nervous, folks. Dean is fine. He just fell in the wine cellar, that's all.
Everything in Dean's past career came together in the 1960s television series The Dean Martin Show. His relaxed singing, lowbrow cool, and gift for comedy. With an audience of up to 50 million viewers, it was one of the most successful programs of its time.
Somehow television seemed to suit Dean. In fact, he became an enormous television star on his own terms. And, well, there was a certain glamour because he arrived as a movie star. And he'd made some hit records, let's face it. The show ran for so long because he was so popular. People adored him. A show like that doesn't just happen. It was tailor-made for Dean.
When he did the Dean Martin Show, which ran for 9 years, his deal was that the show was to be done without any rehearsals. He walked on, the cameras were there, and that was it. I mean, you really have to know what you're doing to do that.
And now the ladies love my personality.
Dean didn't like to rehearse. I mean, he didn't actually like to work, you know. He liked to play golf. So we would have been there for a week, slogging away, rehearsing, you know, trying to get it right. I remember I did one show where Orson Welles was on.
I've got an awful lot of personality.
We were all there working away, getting it right, and then came the day of the taping. We did a run-through once again with the stand-in, and apparently Dean was watching this final rehearsal in his magnificent dressing room, just watching it to see what the show was all about. And then he would come in and do the show. And the final music would be playing and Dean's car would be leaving. I mean, he was out of there.
We've had over 375,000 entries in my Mystery Voice contest, and nobody, and I mean nobody has recognized my Mystery Voice yet. So listen close, because here it is again. This is the last time. Now, this is the Mystery Voice. Listen.
Ever since that night, we've been together, love at first sight. In love forever, it turned out so right. For strangers in the night.
He says, doobie-doobie, I'm gonna die. Doobie-doobie-doo. Scotty Wowdy doobie-doo. How can anybody end the song with doobie-doobie? Now, come on, out there in television land. Somebody must know who that cat is.
It's not that I didn't rehearse. I did more rehearsing than they did. One of the boys made 3 cassettes for me of the whole show. He would do my part on the cassette. And I would have the 3 cassettes. I would have one here, and I would listen to it for about 3 or 4 hours. I'd take one with me on the golf course, listening to it there, and also in the car. So I would rehearse about 4 or 5 hours a day. Then when I went down on a Saturday, they couldn't understand how I could know everything and not be at rehearsal. And everybody said, what a brilliant guy this is. I wasn't brilliant. I was rehearsing more than they were. Why rehearse in the studio when you can rehearse out in the golf course?
Okay, Dum-Dum, what'll it be?
Oh, I'll have the usual glass of milk. Are you sure this is my cue card right here?
He should get an Academy Award for reading that line.
Everything, absolutely everything was on cue cards. There were little arrows pointing so that we all knew which direction we were supposed to be walking in. But for Dean, it was absolutely necessary because he knew nothing about the show until he actually got on the set.
No other performer was so at ease with live recording, ad-libbing fearlessly and irreverently around any mishaps.
Love is lovelier the second time around.
I'm beginning to like this game.
Mere alcohol, don't agree.
She made the mistake. I didn't make a mistake. She made a mistake.
If I get no kiss from champagne. Don't bite your nails. You know what happened to Venus de Milo. Well, you're off. Okay. No, come on. Let's do it again for you. It's all right, sweetheart. It'll just come out of your check. It's all right. We all make mistakes. Remember Hitler?
Dean was one of the funniest men I ever met that you didn't expect to be funny. Constantly changing lyrics. He was basically a comedian, not a singer, I think.
There were a lot of other great shows going on in the States at that time, you know, the Carol Burnett show and Andy Williams, and they were very, very meticulously rehearsed, and there wasn't an awful lot of improvisation going on. But with Dean, there was a lot.
Hi again.
I get no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all.
Two different worlds, we live in two different worlds.
I've always wanted to get to know you and find out what you're really like.
Oh.
Yeah, because whenever I watch you on television, you're always pretending to be so dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not pretending. I really am dumb.
He was the least curious man that I have ever known. He never read the newspaper. And he prided himself that he'd never read a book. He just say that. So I've never read a book. I'm never going to read a book.
Look at air pollution. I mean, who invented the cars and the machines that cause all that?
The smart people.
The smart people.
Yes.
Yes. And what's the major problem confronting our universities in, like,
The smart people. You know, I never thought of that.
That's because you're dumb like me.
He wasn't much of a talker anyway, so I mean, it's not very likely he would sit around and talk about his inner feelings. I haven't got anything to say to anybody, he said.
In fact, we just formed a national organization.
Organization?
Yes.
Hey, why don't you cheer up?
It's called the DDA.
The DDA?
Dumb Dumbs of America.
Oh.
The way he saw the world is just so strange, sort of off-kilter. That's just the way he was.
Doesn't your organization have any activities at all?
Yes, we went and did a...
You went and pulled what?
A dum-dum march. A dumb people's march on Washington.
And what happened?
Well, we got lost.
You got lost? Oh.
The old Southland, Jeanne Martin. Take me back there. Oh, I'm
Making the most of his gift for stardom on television, on stage, on screen, and on record, Dean was raking it in. He was earning $15 million a year and had to please no one but himself.
like heaven for little girls Oh, little girl, get bigger every day.
When Dean wasn't working or exercising his considerable talent on the golf course, there were other attractions besides life at home with Jeannie and the children.
I think one of them got my bottle by mistake.
I finally told him, I said, I don't mind if you just give me 25% of your time. That's all. The rest of it, you do whatever you like. But I said, I want a really honest 25%, a loving 25%. But if I felt that I wasn't even getting the 25%, which is golf, 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 no traveling and no vacations and seeing less of the children. So I felt if he's not that interested that I'm around, then I might as well be with, go someplace else, find somebody that does.
There's a sneaky little side of me that kind of wants to set you free, so I can go see what's waiting just over there.
A very famous personality called me one day and said, there's a girl by the name of so-and-so. And he said, I wonder if you'd do me a favor and put her on the show. I said, of course. So we put her on the show as a cue card girl or something like that. And she did about 3 or 4 shows. I introduced her to Dean, and all he said was, hello, it's nice to meet you. That was it. Hello, it's nice to meet you.
If I could be happier walking with somebody new.
After 4 weeks, Dean and Jeannie broke up. The newspapers had a field day. What was the cause of the breakup? The new girl. And what happened was, the girl was probably 19 or 20, and everybody said, you know, Dean making all these jokes all these years about, hey, this cute little girl went by. And people looked at him one day and they went, hold it. He never addressed it. He never discussed it. He never said anything about it.
That love I'm giving, it'll love that.
It was a time for Dad, I don't know, like a midlife crisis, I guess. You know, a handsome man who wants to go see what else is out there.
There were many stories of the deterioration of Dean and Jeannie's marriage in the gossip columns. Dean had a very public but short-lived affair with a former Miss America, Gail Renshaw. In April 1973, after 23 years of marriage to Jeannie, he married Kathy May Horn. She was 25, Dean was 55.
Scotch and soda, a margarita, a martini. I'll drink anything. Yeah.
And here he is, the star of our show, direct from the bar, Dean Martin.
How long have I been on, boy?
Oh, I drink, but I'm not an alcoholic or anything like that. People like to see that you're a regular guy and you drink. That's the way they wanted me. I couldn't change if I wanted to. Could I be where I am today if I were lazy and if I were a boozer?
When you're drinking, the show looks good to you. When you're drinking, you get stinking. It helps your point of view. But when you're sober, the skies all seem gray. Yeah, when you're sober, life's a pain. So keep drinking, that's what I'm thinking. 'Cause it's what I love to do. Open up the door and let it good times in.
In the 1970s, Dean still reigned supreme in Las Vegas. While the rest of the world had moved on, Dean had stuck to what he was good at. He told the same jokes, sang the same songs, and was adored as ever. He was too old now to reinvent himself. When his marriage to Kathy ended in 1976, he was seeing Jeannie again. It was the sudden death of their son Dino Jr. in 1987 that shattered Dean's world. A blonde, all-American boy. He was a captain in the Air National Guard when his Phantom jet crashed into a Californian hillside.
When our son died, Dean closed shop. He could not bear that. He did not know how to handle his feelings, and it was just too much for him. He just lost his interest in life.
That was the beginning of the end for Dean, because when that happened, that's when he became reclusive, and you knew that he wanted to be alone.
Embrace me, my sweet embrace.
Dean's public, however, remembered him as he once was. Always the joker in the most glamorous of company, without a care in the world. He had made the transition from lounge bar singer to all-round entertainer look effortless.
I love all. You love all many jams about you.
Sinatra, who never grasped the meaning of retirement, thought he had the ideal tonic for his friend. But the Rat Pack comeback tour of 1988 was over almost as soon as it began, with Dean walking out after a handful of performances.
It was a wonderful idea, the remake of those playful times, but it was hardly the Rat Pack. Unless I'm wrong, I'm quite sure Dean said, "Who needs this? I don't need to travel and go on tour, get into hotels and unpack and stay up late."
It was the same thing that his complaint always was. Frank never went to bed. Never. I don't know when he slept, but it was just party, party, party. Well, Dean, he didn't want to do that when he was young. And here he was in his 70s. He just said, "No, I can't do this. I'm too old for this."
When the moon hits your eye like
In his last years, Dean Martin was rarely seen in public. Although still in regular touch with Jeannie, he lived a quiet, solitary existence, conscious of his failing health and shunning the limelight.
Every night he will come in exactly at the same time. He will come in like 6:45, more or less. He will sit down, he will have his 2 drinks, usually 2 drinks, and he will have like a GMB and rocks. And then he will have a little angel hair pasta, which is very, very thin spaghetti with fresh tomato and basil. And then he will have a tiramisu, which is an Italian dessert he used to call pudding. I like my pudding now.
Dad liked to be alone. He was a loner. He really loved it. He had been with so many people all of his life, entertaining. And I think the last few years of his life, he really enjoyed being alone.
They always ask me, was he very lonely? You know, I don't think he was lonely. He reached his point that he felt he had accomplished everything. Enjoyed to dine by himself. I believe that, to me, he lived the kind of life that everybody dreams about. You know, if I say, well, I will live my fantasy, I will love to live his life.
The world admired Dino because he embodied the excess of an era. If he was a man out of time, he was a man who'd had the best of times. He knew that, and Jeannie, who was with him to the end, knew it too.
He was kind of tired of it all. I had talked to him the night before, and he was very weak and not doing well at all. And I said, "Dean, you don't have to hang on for me or for the children." I said, "If you want to go, go. Just let go, go." And then he did the next day.
Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995.
Return to me. Oh, my dear, I'm so lonely. Hurry back, hurry back. Oh, my love, hurry back. I am yours.
I just got into bed with him and just held him. He was gone, but I thought I was only there about 20 minutes, but evidently I was there 2 hours. And holding his hand, he was as warm as could be. I mean, I just like he was in that room.
Please hurry home to my heart.
I had such respect for him, and I loved him so much. And I thought that he was by far the most gentle and kind and thoughtful man that I have ever seen.
I love this one. I mean, you can't be more relaxed than that. I mean, come on. He still got part of his lunch there. He didn't eat the whole roll. Mr. Cool. I love that picture. It's just so nice. He was just trying to relax, you know. And then he just sat back and he started to smoke the cigarette. And I said, oh, Jesus, that's a great shot. It personifies the guy that can really know how to relax and live it up at the same time. I mean, the guy is just so great. Sure miss him.
Cha-cha d'amour, take this song to my lover. Shoo, shoo, little bird, sing my song of love. Shoo,